there's probably no better day than today to talk about what is usually the most boring topic that anybody could ever talk about, which is the distortions associated with tax policy. And why do I say today is the best possible day to talk about that? Is because there's a $640 million lottery. Now, I actually don't care who's going to win, and I don't care how that guy's going to spend the money when he wins. All I care about is figuring out how to save that guy all the taxes that he's going to incur when he wins the lottery. And there's a lot of those taxes. And if he had talked to me before he bought the lottery ticket, I could have saved him a ton of those taxes, because he's going to get income taxes, federal income taxes, state income taxes, estate taxes at the federal level, state estate taxes, a whole host of taxes. But you know what? There's going to be an awful lot of tax lawyers, financial advisors, tremendous amounts of brain power that are going to go to figure out how to avoid paying all those taxes. And that's the problem. Economists like to call it a fancy name. They call it the distortion of incentives. In other words, you try to raise taxes on me, I try to avoid them. And the problem with that concept is, how does the government raise money? It's an extremely inefficient process, because you try to raise $1, but every time you try to raise the tax rate, you get less than you need. So you keep raising, get a little more, keep raising, get even less the next time. And so there's tremendous inefficiencies associated with trying to raise revenue by raising taxes. For example, if I have a $14 trillion economy and I need to raise $140 billion, it would seem simple. I just need to raise taxes 1%, get 140. Good luck. Good luck. Because all the smart people are going to figure out, I got to figure out how to avoid it. So you try to raise taxes 1%, you get $70 billion in revenue. So you raise it a little more. Maybe you get another $30 billion for the incremental, till finally maybe you've raised the tax rate 2% and you finally get the $140 billion. But in reality, if you could have raised taxes 1% and get the $140 billion, that would be efficient. But you had to raise taxes by an incremental 2%, so essentially you really taxed $280 billion to raise $140 billion. There's a $140 billion wedge of inefficiency. So what I want to do in the next few minutes is figure out, how can the government mitigate some of these incentives for people to try to avoid paying taxes? What is it about taxes that frustrate people so much? At the end of the day, we all spend our money. We got 3 buckets of ways to spend our money. We can give it away. We can buy consumer products that we've selected, that we chose to buy. Or we give it away to implicitly buy those goods and services that have been prepackaged to us by the government. It's all of us spending our money. It's those general 3 buckets. But there's something unique about the spending of the money when we give it to the tax man to buy goods and services, as opposed to buying those same goods and services that we've chosen, or getting those, or giving donations to charitable entities, which may or may not include family members, by the way, as part of the charitable giving process. So the question is, what is unique about taxes? It doesn't take much to figure out the first thing that comes off to the top of your head when you think about taxes. That seems weird. Just think about the billing process. I just told you the government is basically a service provider. You're the customer. You're buying goods and services. Taxes are paying for those goods and services. Well, if that's the way it works, why am I filling out the itemized bill to send to the government for the services that they provide? Does any other service provider in the world ask you to fill out the bill, send it to them, they'll check it, and then you send the payment? But it's even better, because if you fill out the bill wrong, you get charged with interest and penalties. The asymmetry of that is fantastic, right? The government is filling out the bill. They're figuring it out. They've got a computer. They're taking in all the data. They're checking in the number. You send in a number. Oh, it turns out to be a little low. Interest and penalties. A little high. We'll get to it later. Very nice asymmetry. But it's worse than that. The asymmetry is perverse. Why is the tax code so complex? Obvious. They make you fill out the bill. If you made it simple, no one would ever make a mistake. Making it complex increases the likelihood that people are going to screw up and they're going to collect interest and penalties. It's obvious. If the government actually changed it, since they easily could do this for probably 99% of the taxpayers in the United States of America, they could easily just send you a bill, you check it like every other bill you get. If there's a mistake, you call up and say, it looks like you overcharged me for this. Fix it, send in the money. But if you did that, then there would be the onus of making the tax code simple, because they wouldn't want to screw up, because they wouldn't make the money anymore. So right off the bat, you see this weird relationship. But probably the most frustration associated with taxation is, versus every other thing you spend money on, happens to be choice. The lack of choice about how your money is being spent. And it's really a psychological issue. And I'll give you an example. I did some landscaping project at my house a few years ago. Hired a landscaper, agreed to a budget, nice plantings, everything was great. Get the bill. I go crazy. I didn't even look at the property. I could just look at the bill. I didn't look at the trees, I didn't look at the planting, I just looked at the stupid bill, and it said 50% more than I agreed to. I was irate. I call up the landscaper. What happened? What happened? Well, when we finished the project, there was an empty corner over there. So I thought fruit trees would look nice. In that corner over there, I thought some dogwood trees would look nice. Doesn't the property look beautiful? I never looked at the property. I could care less. All I was focused on was the fact that somebody else figured out how to spend my money without my approval. And so let me give you a little follow-up on that story. A week later, I taught my landscaper a little about how it feels. What do you think I did? Called up the local pizzeria. It's Friday. Sent 5 pizzas to his office. Called him up. Said, like the pizzas? It's Friday. I figured all your employees would love lunch on the boss. What do you think? The guy was irate. The moral of the story is, look, when I actually calmed down and I looked at my property, the guy was right. The guy was right. The property did look better than what I originally planned. And you know what? If that guy calmed down after he was cursing at me over having ordered 5 pizzas to his, he would have admitted it really was a cool idea to have lunch for his employees, and he created lots of benefits out of that. And you know what? With taxes, we would think the same way. We would think in a quiet moment, you would all admit that a lot of the things that the government provides, that you pay for, you would agree to, but you just don't enjoy the opportunity to decide how to spend it. And that was the point of those. I decided how to spend my landscaper's money on pizza. He decided how to spend my money on dogwood trees. And it all was good, but we were all incredibly frustrated by the experience. And the same thing happens with taxes. So, is there a solution? Why would it be so hard for the government to basically allow some modest level of choice by the taxpayer? So it would work very simply. Right now, if you look at your Form 1040, they only give you one option to choose. This is ironic. They give you one option to choose how to spend your money. $3 to the presidential campaign. That's the only thing they give you a choice, nothing else, okay? But what would be so complicated about having Congress decide, you know what, here's the amount of money we're going to allow. Some modest amount of your money that you put on your 1040, you can allocate how it's going to be allocated, and we're going to decide within reason, within each of the categories. So now they're actually going to do something unique. They're going to identify the categories of things that you're actually purchasing, and you're going to have the ability to modestly change the percentages of that small amount of money that could be allocated to those things. The irony is, it may be small money. That's the irony. We could do this in tiny amounts of money. But the psychological benefits of you now seeing how your money is being spent and feeling that you now have the ability to decide how your money is being spent will go far more than everybody just focusing on the tax rate went up 2%, there's no way I'm going to pay, let's figure out how to avoid it. So the issue of this distortion is present in a lot of things. And what I tried to do in this brief talk is describe how those types of distortions create inefficiency. And we are seeing numbers, more and more, of these types of distortions as a result of government intervention. Government is now intervening in fixed income markets, setting prices of treasury securities and government mortgages. The government continues to intervene in the housing market despite their objectives to say, look, we don't want the taxpayer to be exposed to housing finance and continuing to write mortgage insurance and taking that risk. Well, they still create the distortion because they continue to offer mortgage insurance at rates that nobody could actually price or provide in the competitive private markets. So how will the private market ever take over that responsibility if you continue to offer prices that are a fraction of the cost that the private sector could ever do it? But they state their mission is to try to get out of housing finance and no longer provide mortgage guarantees. So again, what I've tried to do is, in this 12 or 13 minutes or so, is to try to give you a sense of the distortions of incentives, how that can influence policy, and how that is extremely inefficient. And the key is, to get efficiency, is to figure out the psychology that drives those distortions and improve the economics. With that, I thank you very much.